Hello there, and welcome along to Season 3 and Episode 1 of the Garden the Ben podcast. Brought to you proudly in association with Peterbilt's Roses, winner of 30 Chelsea gold medals and crafting timeless roses since 1968. Shop online at www.peterbiltsroses.com and make sure that you're following along on Instagram and TikTok. Well, welcome back everybody. I can't believe that we're here already launching Season 3 and Episode 1 of the Garden the Ben podcast. It seemed like just yesterday that we were wrapping up Season 2. I hope that you all had an absolutely splendid summer. Here on the south coast of the UK, on the outskirts of the New Forest, we had a blisteringly hot summer, with temperatures soaring to 28, 29, 30 and even 31 degrees for weeks and weeks on end. We also didn't receive a huge amount of rain, meaning that many evergreen shrubs died, many trees and large shrubs chose to drop their leaves. It has also, with a combination of weather factors starting in the spring, when it was very, very mild and still and dry, caused what we call in the horticultural world a mast year. This is when trees and shrubs all consecutively produce large amounts of fruit, nuts and seeds all in the same season. This is normally brought about by large amounts of stress and traditionally happens around every 7 or 8 years. A mast year is often followed in folklore by a harsh or heavy winter, so we're bracing ourselves to see what happens next on the calendar. 2025 was always set to be an absolutely enormous year for myself, and it did not disappoint. For the first time ever, I was able to debut to my online social media followers 4 brand new plant releases here in the UK. I then went on to review no fewer than 81 brand new roses, adding more roses to my back catalogue than I did in 2024 and 2023 combined. 2 of those were brand new varieties launched here in the UK and were eagerly awaited. I'm looking forward to bringing you first impressions of no fewer than 6 brand new varieties in 2026. And because I'm such an overachiever and I seem to have absolutely nothing left to do with my time, I then went on to review 17 peonies and create a further 30 companion planting videos, which have been added to my cottage garden collection videos on YouTube. So if you're interested in adding another dimension to your rose garden, head across to my YouTube channel where you can watch all of those videos now. There's over 60 to watch and 60 recommendations of plants that you can plant alongside your roses in the garden to offer you the most wonderful cottage garden look. Now, on to Season 3. I have lined up some absolutely incredible guests from all over the world to talk to you over the next few weeks, and Season 3 will continue to run probably till just before Christmas. I've actually made it my personal mission to bring you many different conversations on many different topics. Lots of things that you wouldn't normally expect me to talk about. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guest. Today's guest is a very old and treasured friend of mine who I worked with in another life. We've both gone on to do completely different things since we worked together. And the interview with Jenny will be broken down into several sections, the last of which is incredibly difficult for me to listen to. But I think it's really important that we share the story behind myself and how I got to know Jenny so well. The conversation you're about to hear was actually brought about by a rose review this season. I was due to review the Menopause Charity Rose launched by Harkness Roses, I believe in 2023. The post specifically on YouTube led to several very strange comments, not about the rose or the way I was presenting it, but indeed about the charity the rose was linked to. And that got me thinking. My friend Jen, who I used to work with many years ago, now operates an account on Instagram called Jen Flourish Nutrition. Not only does she specialise in women's health, hormones, nutrition and lifestyle, but also in the dietary requirements and energy levels with perimenopause and menopausal women. And there seems to be a real stigma and difficulty talking about this particular subject. Now, bringing it back to my normal life and my experiences of the menopause and perimenopause, I used to work with 2 ladies many years ago when I had my sandwich shop that suffered with terrible symptoms around their changing levels of hormones. And Mark, in his career, leads several community groups, one of which is the Menopause Awareness Group within the business he works for. And that particular group is one of the largest attended within his organisation. So those factors combined, I thought this was a particularly interesting and very important subject for us to talk about. So without any further delay, let's get into the conversation I had with Jenny just a few weeks ago. Well, today on the podcast, I'm joined by an incredibly old friend who I haven't seen for a very, very long time. Jen, welcome along.
Hello.
Jen runs an account on Instagram called Jen Flourish Nutrition. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and what it is that you share.
Yeah, so I help women with their health and in a few different ways. So I'm really passionate about nutrition. Food has always been my thing, but as time has gone by...
I've got a special, for some reason, Mark said, what snack shall I do for Jen? And I said, I know she loves red onions.
Oh my gosh, yes! Because they're full of sulphur.
Just remember you being
obsessed
with red onions.
It's so true, and I still am. My husband will tell you, it's so true.
Anyway, sorry, I've interrupted.
Yeah, so I help women and also businesses with nutrition. So I coach people through nutrition, and I specialise in peri and post-menopausal women.
Mm-hmm.
And also I go into businesses and I help them with their food culture. So I run workshops because we've all worked in those places where people eat rubbish, feel rubbish, output is rubbish, and they have high levels of sickness. So having worked in lots of different workplaces, one of them with you about 20 years ago, which we will talk about.
There was a lot of processed food being consumed.
Oh my gosh,
a lot of alcohol.
Vending machine as well.
And trips to Asda to buy whole chickens and
oh my gosh,
pork knuckles.
Oh yeah, and donuts. I know. And that's one side is nutrition, and also very much linked to the demographic of women that I help. I'm also a CPD accredited menopause trainer. So I am a training partner for an amazing organisation called Hormones on the Blink.
Mm-hmm.
And I help businesses by running workshops to educate around the subject of menopause, to help the organisation build an inclusive and safe environment, and bearing in mind that every single female, so that's 50% of the population, is going to go through that. So therefore everyone around them is going to be affected. And it's not just at that certain age phrase that we think about. It affects people at all different ages. Yeah. So under that umbrella of women's wellness, teeing in through the food and lifestyle and also the general education, that's what I do.
And can I ask? I mean, if you don't want to answer this one, don't. Is this from what's led you to this path? Is this a personal experience, or is this observing other people?
It's very personal.
Yeah.
So I'm 45.
Mm-hmm.
I am right in the middle of mine.
And you haven't aged since
thank you so much.
Literally.
Okay, so and that is down to the food and lifestyle and a bit of genetics. But if I'd carried on drinking, smoking, and that disgusting lifestyle that we had 20 years ago in the motor trade, I don't think I'd have fared so well. But the experience is really personal. Currently, I'm 45. I'm right in the middle of perimenopause. I've just started my own HRT journey.
Yeah.
I've really, noticed what's happening with my body and my brain. I really want to talk about what happens with the brain a lot today. That's a big deal. But essentially, my kids are 10 and 7 now. When I had my little boy 10 years ago, it was a really traumatic birth. I nearly died. I had 8 blood transfusions. It was horrendous, really, and it took me a long time to get over it. And as long as you're feeding the baby and you haven't died, you're literally just sent home with no support, no education around what happens at that time. Yeah. I was left with deep depression, which is not just a postnatal side effect, it's also something that can come from having trauma and blood transfusions. Yeah. And after that point, so I'd dabbled in the gym and nutrition up until that point and, tried to look after myself. My education wasn't formal and it didn't really have a drive. Then it felt like I needed to survive. I needed to get myself out of this hole for my baby and my family. And I quite simply just started walking as soon as I was well enough to do it.
Just something as basic as...
Very simple. Yeah. I started walking. I started reading books about food. And, I grew up as a woman in the 90s where being as thin as possible was a status symbol. Now we know that is not healthy, physically or mentally. And after that point and over the coming years and having my daughter, I started...
Again, I'm shocked after such a traumatic experience with your first that you went on to have a second one.
And purely because we wanted to give him a sibling.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. And through that second pregnancy, I was extremely anxious. My mental health was very poor.
I can imagine you were, yeah.
Very poor. And shortly after having my daughter, I dipped into postnatal depression again. And what really saved me after that point is whilst I'd, managed to regain and push my fitness through walking and sort of general gym training and educating myself on food, after having my daughter, my husband said to me, I'll buy you some personal training sessions at the local gym. Go and do some weight training, and they've got a creche there and they'll take babies from a couple of months old. And there were lovely ladies in this creche, so they took little Florence and I went and had some strength training sessions and started lifting. And what it did for my confidence and my mental health was massive.
So not only a physical way of exerting and actually training your body, but also a break from Florence. And you could put her somewhere safe and somewhere for you to switch off and find some time for yourself.
Absolutely, to switch off and to learn new things, what that does for your brain as well, and to understand what your body can do, and that it's about strength, and it's about building yourself up rather than making yourself smaller, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, someone who's gone on his own personal journey, changing the voice in one's head is really difficult. And also with my change over the last few months, as I actually making myself stand in front of the mirror and actually look at myself and not using that, oh yes, you don't look too bad, but that bit could change.
Absolutely.
And just being nice to yourself, because if you can't be nice to yourself, why is anybody else going to be nice to you? Because all you pick up on is the negative all the time. And again, Mark and I still do that. He rebuffs and I say, well, wait a minute, I just gave you a compliment. Don't throw the compliment away.
Yeah, absolutely. And learning to receive like that starts with compliments, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can open yourself to receiving good fortune or anything else unless you can start to receive the compliments. And the reason we can't receive compliments is because we've got a drop in confidence. We've had negative talk from other people or from authority throughout our lives. And I think when things happen to you, like this story of me having my children is a really big deal. But I having worked in sales for about 20 years, I think, up until that point, soon after having my daughter, we hit the pandemic. I was made redundant from my sales job. There were no other jobs available. I felt frustrated. I still felt depressed. It was a really difficult time. So I decided to retrain as a personal trainer at that point. Retrained as a personal trainer, which you can do quite quickly. And I had quite a lot of knowledge by that time.
Because you still have another account. Do you still use the PT account? Or is
I don't know.
I'll unfollow that one then.
Yeah, unfollow that one, yeah. So retrained as a personal trainer. However, you probably remember in lockdown, the gym's shut.
Yes.
And I thought, you are not stopping me now.
No.
So
Look at you tenacious lady, you.
So I sold my car and I bought a VW T5 van, as you do, and I bought about 100 kilos worth of equipment, and I got a licence from the local council to work on the village green. And I worked outdoors on that village green, running boot camps and doing PTs for 365 days in all weather. And that is what I did because I had decided that nobody was going to stop me, and I needed.
For those listening, the fingers come out. Jen's pointing and gyrating. This is very passionate. This is coming from a point of passion and.
It was, and I needed to get women out and training, not as a punishment but to show them that they could leave their children at home with the father of their children, and that their physical and mental health was important, and that we needed to come together.
Because let's face it, I mean, I don't personally have children, but obviously Mark comes from a childcare background, and the pandemic for many who had children was brutal. Being put into a confined space with their children that would normally, and have many, let's face it, the vast majority of them still having to try and work from home in bloody speech brackets, whilst trying to educate their own children or look after their own children, was just hideous. It
definitely was. And I think, really, if I think about it, was it the most sensible thing to do? Did it earn me much money? No. Did it save my mental health at that time? Yes. Did
Yeah.
it save other women's mental health? Yes. I've made relationships from doing that, you know, have been really nourishing for me and hopefully for them as well, and stood up to this day.
Mm-hmm.
But the more women that I worked with who were coming to me thinking that they needed their problems solved with exercise, I realised they needed their problems solved with nutrition.
Yeah.
As a personal trainer, you have very basic qualification to advise people with nutrition, but only the ones that you're personal training. So over sort of the following few years, I realised I need to just throw myself into the nutrition side of things, because the majority of the women that came to my boot camps and trained with me, they were in the peri or post-menopause stage. Their bodies were changing. They didn't understand about metabolism. They didn't understand what was happening in their brains. And they could come and train 6 days a week with me if they liked, but it would not change the fact that they were trying to outrun a poor diet. And that wasn't their fault, because diet and nutrition is really down to privilege.
Yeah.
It's down to the education that we have.
Yeah.
It's down to the people that we live with. It's down to the culture that we grow up in. It's down to what we're fed and educated at school, what our parents did. Yeah. It's not a weakness.
And the time that somebody has available.
The time that somebody has available, the budget that they have.
Yeah.
Can they get internet shopping? Do you have a farm shop? Can you afford to go to Whole Foods, or are you going to be going to Lidl's?
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, right, okay, I'm going to get qualified properly. And I have kind of a unique approach of working with women where we look at their lives holistically, and yes, prescribe their food, but food that they recognise with a slightly different guise to it.
Yeah.
And I do things like make myself an expert on supermarkets. So if somebody says to me, my budget is Lidl's budget, or my budget is Waitrose budget, I've got you, and this is what we're going to do. But equally, you need to make these lifestyle adaptations as well.
Yeah.
Because
let's face it, one I had a doctor on with me, and he's going to be on with this particular series as well, Dr. Costa, and he was talking about food allergies in children.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the amount of ingredients in the food that we eat, even if you pick something that you would think is very, very basic, has dozens and dozens of ingredients in it that actually many of us are allergic to, or not supposed to have in the quantities or combinations that we actually put them into our bodies. And the most reactions he sees in the population is at Christmas, because we all bring together and we all feast at Christmas, because it's what we naturally do to celebrate a certain time, and bringing together all of those foods in those combinations causes a chain reaction of different things. And again, something that's been big for me to work out on is I come from a dairy family. I'm not intolerant to milk, but milk and dairy makes me really ill. And it wasn't until about 5-10 years ago I realised that pint of milk you drink every day, I love, but actually makes me bloated. It gives me an upset stomach. It doesn't make me feel good. I don't sleep well. Just by taking that away, actually I've kind of... Bread, I know it's a very easy one to point at, but you know, it's the modern day crack of most people's. White bread is just evil. Get rid of it, don't eat it. And don't get me wrong, I could stand at the toaster now with a pack of butter, and I could eat 6 or 7 pieces of toast, and I could feel lovely and warm for 10 minutes, and then think, what on earth have you done? Why did you do that? And I'll go 3 months without eating another piece of bread. But
so true. I've just in the last couple of years just really surrounded myself with education, organisations and contacts that are really supporting women, and everybody surrounding those women. That's really important to say. Their partners, their colleagues, their children, with education, with simple things that they can do to help themselves. You know, I feel that we live in a society where we don't take much responsibility for our health. We say, I've developed a condition, I want to go to the doctors, I want to get a pill. Okay, well, I'd like you to think about why you developed that condition and what you could do that's in your control before we get to that stage. And that's not me, saying that we shouldn't use medicine by any means, but it's saying, come on, we have to take some responsibility for our lifestyle.
And again, we have to appreciate that just because the pill that you're given to solve one problem won't give you another.
No, absolutely.
And that's a situation I found myself in with pain regulation, actually not listening to my body constantly scream because I was burnt out. And here's something to take away that pain, which enables you to continue to do more. Actually start listening to your body, and actually there's symptoms of, okay, there was another pill to get rid of the heartburn, or there's another pill to help you go to the toilet, and you think, oh my goodness, this is I'm now taking 6 pills, and why am I taking 6 pills when actually I could just dial this back and start again?
Absolutely. And I know there's a lot of elitism around nutrition and women's health. I'm not down with that. I think that there are lots of things that the ordinary person with an ordinary budget can do with a little education. With a little education, you can see through the crap that the supermarket feeds you. You can see through the fancy... Are we allowed to mention brands on here?
You can do
the Sweaty Betty crew and all of that.
Again, no, these are individual personal opinions. So you mentioned
just a personal opinion. You know, I like some fancy activewear as much as the next person, but you don't need it, and it shouldn't be a barrier to you being healthy. So I, just try to stay really down to earth with things. I love to read biohacking journals and understand what my red light mask is doing, and could I go to a sauna and do this and do that. But essentially, if I've got very little budget, I still know what to do, and I would still know what to buy and how to feel better in myself and what exercise to do. And I really try to make my advice malleable to the person and to their lifestyle, rather than here you go, here's a one size fits all, here's an auto-generated food plan, or this is a list of stuff that solves menopause symptoms. No, it's really about understanding that whole person's situation and what they have available to them. And it's really interesting. There's going to be people that are listening along today are thinking, why is the gardener Ben, me, as a man, talking to a woman about these things? But again, at the end of the day, there's a huge stigma and a huge negative spin on people talking about this really openly. I understand that my audience is predominantly ladies, and they're of a certain age, so they're all going to be experiencing this at some point. And have you come across an awful lot of that kind of thing? Yeah, totally. So especially in my role as a menopause and hormone health trainer. So if we break it down, let's say I go into a business and I do a menopause education session with 30 people in a business. I'm not just going to invite women. What about all the guys who are in there and they're going home and they're seeing their partners crying, forgetting things, leaving cupboard doors open, not being able to find their car keys, having terrible sleep at night, and then getting shouted at in the morning because their partner isn't coping? What about their sister, auntie, mum? What about the person who sits on the desk next to them who,
turns the air conditioning down to Arctic temperatures every 15 minutes?
Yeah, for sure. We all have to look after each other's health. So why are we going to be switched off and just say it's your business? I don't understand. It's going to affect everybody's lives. Everybody's. And most of us, I think, I'm like a fairly typical example, 45, 2 kids in primary school, ageing parents that I have a large responsibility to look after, try to do a little bit in the community to help people out. I've got a job, I need to earn money to pay bills, etc. I am the sandwich generation. But I also work with men and I help all sorts of people out. I have a brother who's of a similar age. Are those men going to ignore the fact that I'm really struggling with my own hormone journey and HRT and what's happening to me and my mental capacity? No, they're not. They're going to want to understand it and see if there's maybe anything they could do to help.
Well, if they're coming from a place of understanding and care, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
But many won't.
Many won't.
And that's where the points of conflict and anger and aggression and distrust and sort of all the negative things spy from. It's really strange because out literally directly behind you, and I mean like 8 feet behind you outside in a barrel, is the Menopause Charity Rose from Harkness Roses. Now that was launched 2023. I've reviewed that one this year as part of my Rose reviews, and I've got a comment on YouTube which I've left there because I wanted people to see it. And it was like, lovely rose, but I don't know why this charity needs a rose named after it. And this person sort of mic dropped this sort of comment. And it's like, well, actually, 50% of the population is going to go through what we class as menopause at any one time. And a lot of people don't understand that even trans men will go through the menopause.
Absolutely.
And it's not something that we can help. And actually, why shouldn't this charity have a rose named after it? And it's a bloody good rose. Let's face it.
Absolutely, that awareness is really important, and also let's extend that. So that's really important that you said that trans men are going to go through that.
Yeah.
Some men who have had cancer treatment will go through menopause-like symptoms.
Is that because of a drop in testosterone?
Yeah, potentially in hormone treatment. Yeah. So that's really important to consider. Menopause we think of happening around the age of 50 to 60, let's debunk that myth straight away. In the UK at the moment, the average age of menopause is 51. Menopause is just the single day after not having a period for a year.
Okay.
Perimenopause, the period where your hormones seesaw and give you physical and psychological symptoms, is up to 12 years before that.
Okay.
So if we take 51, and this is the average age for a white woman in the UK.
You're knocking on the door of the late 30s.
You're knocking on the door of the late 30s. Let's look at other ethnicities. So potentially, if you are a South Indian woman, we could be dropping that to 46, take 12 years off that. Okay, so we're thinking younger and younger, and this is just for a typical natural menopause, and this is going to drop because we all know that our hormones are changing. Girls are going into puberty earlier. That's because of the society.
Because nutrition.
Absolutely,
yeah.
and hormone disruption from the chemicals that are in our environment now, the plastics, the personal products, etc. So this timescale is getting skewed. Every 10 years this is going to be reviewed.
And again, I'm just going to, if I may, just pause you there, because again, I don't have children. This is from my own personal perspective, and I'm remembering what it was like as a young person, that we do sexually mature at a much earlier age, because we are cared for. We don't have to run away from people trying, we have shelter, and we good. Most of us have got good food in our bellies, and 12, 13 is a normal age to become sexually mature. But then also there's this apprehension that you're going to know what you want to do with your life at that point. And just because you've come into puberty and your breast may have grown and your voice is broken, doesn't actually necessarily mean you want to know what you want to do as a person. So there's this perception very, very early that. Yeah, I don't think people really understand. It's this. Oh, well, again, we all stood there. What would you like to do when you grow up? Again, well, I don't know. You and I were sat here opposite each other. We've both incarnated ourselves, I don't know, half a dozen times.
Absolutely, definitely. But these changes, the timescales are just skewed, and there's also has to be taken into consideration that many women are sent into chemical or surgical menopause at any age for medical reasons. So a high percentage of breast cancer treatments, say up to 80%, cause immediate chemical menopause.
Okay, again, that's not something I was aware of.
No, so and another hormone health trainer that I work with, she was sent into.
Go on, give her a drop.
Oh, Lisa.
Lisa.
Yeah, and this story really touched me. So she's diagnosed with breast cancer, terrible. She said everybody that she worked for was really accommodating. She needed to have the cancer treatment, so she has chemo, she has an operation. She gets to the stage where she goes back to work and everybody's like, oh, you're cured now, great. And she's like, no, I've just been dropped into chemical menopause. No 10, 12 years of hormonal changes for me to get my head around it. I have been dropped
off the cliff, literally fallen off a cliff.
After falling off a cancer cliff and thinking I'm going to lose my life and going through traumatic treatment, now I've just been dropped to the bottom of menopause.
Literally massive amounts of post-adrenaline and burnout and exhaustion from that.
Absolutely.
Not even time to recover, and then literally body all over the place.
Absolutely. And she said that her employers were literally like, oh, well, don't really know how to deal with that. There's not a box we can put you in for that. There's not a box we can put you in for that. And of course, we've all worked for organisations. Do you remember years ago, you were frightened to tell an employer that you had mental health problems like depression, anxiety, etc. You thought, oh God, they're just going to manage me out. But these days, that's changed. Exactly that.
I think you and I
we'll talk about that, So, but these days...
It's like, get rid of that one quickly before it costs us a big heap of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But now mental health first aiders appear in most businesses. Most businesses who are worth their salt anyway will put that training into place. They will support their managers. I became a mental health first aider off of my own back because I understand the link between hormone health and mental health, and I want to be facilitated to signpost people to professional help, and I also just want to do what I can in those stages.
Let's face it and acknowledge that, and give that the space, because that is probably the biggest step that anybody will ever make, isn't it?
Yeah.
Acknowledging that there is an issue or a problem, and actually having the courage and the strength, or someone else to advocate for them, and put their hand up and say, actually, right now, I need a little bit of help with
Absolutely.
X. Where can I go for help with X? And that, I think, for me, on my journey that I've been on the last 13, 14 months, was the biggest step. Just giving me a place to go was the biggest thing that anybody could have ever done for me.
Absolutely. And I think society still has a long way to go, but it's come on a long way in terms of creating safe spaces to talk about mental health, not being able to self-diagnose by any means, but just to say, I'm not myself, I'm struggling, my feelings are too big, stuff is coming up from the past, for example, and I'm finding it traumatic, even though I've firmly put it in a box for so many years. This is really common, so we're getting there with that. Organisations have mental health first aiders, but we don't have menopause representatives or hormone health representatives in many businesses.
No.
And that is where I really enjoy the role that I have as a menopause and hormone health trainer, to go into businesses and create a safe space, to give some training and education, but also just to create this calm space where people will put their hands up and say, actually, I've been really struggling and I think it's my hormones and I don't know what to do because my best mate says I'm too young, or my manager's a man and I don't want to speak to them, or my manager's a female but she's a really hard bitch and she's just got no sympathy for me. And this is really common, and to be able to say to them, that's okay, this is what I suggest you do. Here's some signposting, here's some really practical stuff. Listen, we're all in the same boat here. You're not alone. And to help people advocate for themselves, whether it be with mental health, with hormone health, I just want to help people advocate for themselves and give them the signposting to the professional help that is there.
As you can hear, this is a topic that Jenny feels incredibly passionate about and is more than qualified to talk on. In the next section of our interview, I wanted to steer the conversation back around towards food and what foods we should be eating to maintain our energy levels or achieve our fitness goals. And if you're a woman in peri or menopause, which foods you could be eating to maintain energy levels, ensure you get the best sleep possible, and hopefully make sure that you're feeling as well as you can do. This obviously then took the conversation towards shopping. More specifically, online shopping, and how you can use online services to not only plan your meals and help you structure your budget to you and your family's needs. So let's head back to my conversation with Jenny and talk everything food. Should we talk a little bit about food? Because I know it's something you're really passionate about. Now, obviously, I operate an awful lot of my time on the internet. I see an awful lot of hype and I can't remember the right word for this, but sort of hype and sort of scandalisation of certain bits and products.
Yeah.
Are there foods that you come across that loads of other people say, oh, this if you eat this, if you don't eat that, this is going to solve your problems?
Yeah, I see that all the time. But essentially, removing one food and adding in another food isn't going to solve all your problems.
Yeah.
You've got to look at your diet as a whole, as a structure, So we are supposed to eat a range of nutrients in a proportion of macronutrients. So macronutrients are your protein, your carbohydrates and your fats. Mm-hmm. The modern diet has skewed that so that most of us are eating too high carbohydrate.
Why is everybody so obsessed with protein?
Yeah, so
protein.
Yeah, so everybody is obsessed with it because lots of people undereat protein for their goals, okay? So if your goal is to support your muscle mass because you want to stay fit and strong and have a good metabolism, let's say throughout the menopause, where you have a particular decline in muscle mass, and your muscle mass is responsible essentially for your metabolism. You need to eat enough protein to stimulate keeping that muscle mass.
So I'm going to listen to this intently, because someone who's been on Manjaro for 13 months, and there's a particular medical professional that I see quite regularly. He's my osteopath, and I have the utmost respect for him, but he's always going on about must maintain your muscle mass. Are you eating enough protein? Because he's been observing my journey as I go through this. But again, I didn't realise, he hadn't gone through as far as to explain that actually my muscle mass will regulate my
metabolism.
Metabolism.
So essentially, and I have lots of clients who work with Manjaro as well, so I don't have any moral view on that. I understand that everybody is individual. I think that their genetics are individual, and their genetic and psychological link to food and food behaviours are individual.
Very complicated.
So I am not a let's bin Manjaro, and I'm not pro either, because as you mentioned earlier, there is a side effect to every medication, so we have to be respectful of that. But finding the right and individual journey for somebody is important. But muscle mass, I cannot go on about it enough. not just as a personal trainer and a nutrition coach, but really, if you think about it, so your muscle mass is magical, okay? Your muscle mass is responsible for your metabolism. It is the most metabolically expensive tissue you have. What that means is it burns the most calories even when you're sat on the sofa watching telly.
Yeah.
So if you want to manage your weight and you want to be able to enjoy food, you need to have a good muscle mass. Your muscle mass is one of the biggest predictors of longevity and disease. So the better muscle mass you have, the lower chance you have of developing all mortality causes. Okay, so we're talking about the big stuff like cancers, strokes, heart disease, diabetes, the stuff that is killing us all really in the modern world.
And again, this is what I think a lot of people are failing to actually explain, because you've just said to it, okay, if you maintain your muscle mass, have a decent muscle mass, that you could avoid some. When people say, "Oh, you just got to keep active," but they didn't actually say you've got to keep active actually to maintain your muscle mass and not sort of sit on the sofa and waste away.
Totally. I think it's really important when I coach people for them to understand why I am prescribing certain things, whether it be foods and activities. And the muscle mass, if you just keep a focus on your lifestyle rolling around that, so for example, including strength training, mobility, eating enough protein so that your strength training can build the muscle. You can't build a house out of nothing. You've got to build it out of bricks, right? Yeah. So the protein is the fuel for building the muscle mass. And there's another magical thing about muscle mass is that it produces these lovely little things called myokines, and they go around your body. They improve your mental health, your cognitive function. Now,
why is it when you've just mentioned that name that I'm envisaging some sort of little Nomi, Oompa Lumpy type little person?
Totally. So I imagine,
little fix-it type tinkery people that are going.
Yeah. So I do actually imagine when it comes to biology, I imagine things like that. So they go around, they have a little tinker in the brain, and they make you feel better. And then
like a little cobbler.
Yeah. And then they go around, and if you've got defective cells, they eat them up and get rid of them. But if a defective cell is left alone and fed with sugar and chemicals, it could become cancer. Yeah. So your muscle mass is magical.
I don't think actually a lot of people realise that actually most people get cancer hundreds of times a day, but those little things you've just described actually go around in the body and eradicate them.
In a simplistic form, that is it. Yeah. And your muscle mass helps produce hormones as well. So if we're talking about hormone health, that's not just for me, that's for you as well. So you want your testosterone to stay at a good level. You also have all the other hormones. We're not just talking about sex hormones here. So we've got the 3 sex hormones that most of us are familiar with: testosterone, estrogen and progesterone. Yeah. But we have loads of other hormones as well. We're really familiar with insulin, and we understand that insulin sensitivity is also something that helps us manage weight, manage mood as well. So that's really important, and that is something that we need to work on. So the muscle mass is helping all of those hormones. So we don't need to obsess over it, and neither do we need to spend hundreds of hours in the gym if we're just going to eat crap at home.
No, because
we've got to find some moderation. What can you do? So for me personally, I go to the gym and strength train to a good intensity 3 times a week. I walk every day, sometimes with a weighted vest, and I do yoga once a week. So they're not big time frames really. They're just small time frames, but that is something that I do fairly consistently unless I'm ill. And my diet, so we're going to talk about specific foods now. Specific people may need specific foods, let's say for specific symptoms, for health conditions or hormonal or menopausal symptoms. But generally, what we would all benefit from is, to start with on the removal of foods, is removing ultra-processed foods. Yeah. What does that mean? It means removing foods that have multiple chemical ingredients that you don't recognise. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to go in the supermarket, turn over the loaf of bread or the packet of crisps and go, what is that hydrogenate of fatty acids? Does that sound nice to you? Delicious. I'd love to put hydrogenated fatty acids on my bread.
But then after the ones with the names comes the ones with just the chemical coding.
Yeah, literally, and the codes. All right, so let's just sack those off. Yeah. Once we remove those from the trolley and we go around the supermarket and we look for things that have single names or they just have simple list of ingredients. So let's say we go and find a proper sourdough and it's just got wheat and salt and water,
so
it will have fermented. Okay, super. We know those things.
So I don't know, there might not be an answer to this, and apologies. Is there, in your opinion, a sort of a golden number that people should avoid? For instance, if something they're picking up in the supermarket has more than 7 ingredients or 9 ingredients or 15, where do you feel is a safe? Is there a safe sort of number where you think it?
Minimal ingredients, but you must recognise all of them.
Okay.
That old saying, would your granny have had it in the cupboard? Oh yeah, so the sourdough. Yeah, she had flour and salt and water.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Did she have hydrogenated fatty acids? No. No, she didn't.
That's heading for plastic.
So literally, if you don't recognise it, put it back.
Yeah.
If you think, I'm not sure it's that bad, all right, Google it. Find out what it is. There are some other things that are a bit confusing. Like there's a lot of chat about seed oils.
Yes.
So quite simply,
I've had a lot of conversation with my very lovely osteopath about seed oil.
You? Yeah. So quite simply, there's 2 reasons to avoid seed oils.
And his opinion on this: if it doesn't go hard at room temperature or in the fridge, don't eat it.
Don't eat it, literally. So. Have you seen Have you seen a seed? How hard do you think it is to get an oil out of a seed, right? Okay, so let's have a think about it. What do you think we'd have to do? We'd have to crush the damn things at extremely high heat. And how would we create that high heat? Well, it's actually with a really toxic chemical that then, of course, leaches into the food. It's called hexane. Disgusting. So most seed oils are cheaply produced. They weren't originally produced to be eaten. They were produced for
fuel.
As fuel,
to burn.
And in the agricultural industry. So, but they've got into all of our food because they give it a longer shelf life and they make it nice and moist, etc. So to start with, you've got nasty chemicals in there. It's rank before you've even eaten it. But the other thing is, seed oils have a really high proportion of omega-6.
Yeah.
And we've all heard of omega-6 and omega-3, right? Well, omega-6 is quite inflammatory. And we only need a little bit of inflammatory ingredients in our body to set off certain processes. What we need mainly in today's toxic world is lots of anti-inflammatory ingredients, and that's where the omega-3s come in. Mm-hmm. So if we just avoid the omega-6, so even let's say you've gone and bought really nice cold pressed British rapeseed oil that hasn't used that yucky process we talked about. If you eat too much of it, too many omega-6s. So if you're somebody who suffers from any inflammatory conditions, pain, your hormones are playing up, mental health conditions, we need to stay away from the omega-6s. It's not going to help you, and eat your fats in the omega-3s.
No, and again, the problem is these are all described as being heart healthy, aren't they? They're all packaged. So these are lower in saturated fats, and we've become obsessed with eating low fat, low carb, as in diet versions of what we used to have. And actually, I think that the culture we need to come back to is actually let's eat less of the higher fat, higher sugar thing, less processed food. I've gone back to eating butter,
eggs.
Yeah.
And if you were to eat dairy, then full fat milk, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think broadly, if to start with, there's one thing you could do. If you take the UPFs out of your diet, you'll then walk around the supermarket and go, well, what am I going to put in my trolley then?
Yeah.
So when I walk around a supermarket or when I coach somebody to shop, because eating starts with shopping, right?
Yeah.
So if I don't coach somebody how to shop, they might get it all wrong.
Okay, so what's the biggest tip you can give to someone who's just about to go shopping?
Biggest tip to go shopping is to start with, we're going to avoid the UPFs, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to go around the shop and we're going to buy all our proteins. Let's assume this person...
It's not to stop at McDonald's before you go shopping.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Maybe have a healthy breakfast before you go shopping, because no one wants to shop hangry.
Have yourself a little omelette before
you... Have yourself a little omelette before you go.
Yeah.
Go there with a list of meals. Work out how many people in the house.
So planning ahead. Yeah.
How many people in the house? So how many meals do we need? So how many forms of protein, vegetables and carbohydrates do we need? And the easy rule for this, I would say, is let's picture the plate. Let's chuck out that NHS healthy plate. We'll sack that off, okay? That's come from somewhere else. It's not going to make you healthy.
Well, again, we all know where these recommended calories came from.
We certainly do.
They came from a very awful place, which I don't think a lot of people understand, that
absolutely
children were starved to death in places to work out how many calories the body needed, and they were of a different ethnicity to an awful lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah, and carbohydrate requirement is not blanket, one fits all.
No, of course it isn't.
But if we could talk about a simple guide for the average person, who I know no details about, but I think the majority of people who are confused about diet, think about your plate, split it into 3 sections. In one section, you've got a chunk of protein that's about the size of your fist.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're talking a good source of protein is...
We're talking about lean chicken, fish, including oily fish, red meat, let's not vilify red meat, eggs, lean dairy. We're talking about things like proper Greek yogurt, so minimally processed.
I remember you used to like Greek yogurt.
Absolutely, minimally processed, one ingredient, none of this low fat crap that's got loads of sweeteners and goodness knows what else in it, and thickeners.
Because you take the fat out, you need to put something else in to make it taste something.
Proper eggs. And maybe if you're a busy person, a protein powder, a good minimally processed protein powder can be really useful for you. And we can also put in there things like tofu, tempeh. If you're a veggie, beans, pulses, lentils. If you're not a veggie, we're going to move the beans, pulses and lentils into the carbohydrate. Okay. In the carbohydrates.
Because again, that's a really interesting spin actually, because Mark and I tried to be vegetarian for quite some time. We tried to be what we class as flexitarian, which means we didn't say no to meat, but 5-6 days a week we tried to stay away from meat, and we both piled on weight. Now we piled on weight because we didn't realise we were double bubbling the carbohydrates all the time. Pasta with bread or rice with, again, just literally piling on the carb all the time, and then we got big.
Absolutely. And so lots of things like beans and pulses and legumes are so healthy and have so many great things in them, and they're so high in fibre, but they are only a bit of protein and a lot of carbohydrate. So if you are strictly vegetarian, they are something that you need to include in your diet, but then you have to manage the carbohydrate intake.
Well, we didn't do that very well.
No. So you've got your healthy plate, we've got this chunk of protein, right, that's the size of your fist. Then we're going to move around to the carbohydrate, and then we're going to look at a chunk of carbohydrate that's about the size of your fist, right? And that could be a scoop of let's think of unprocessed things. So it could be the bean, pulses and legumes that we've spoken about. It could be rice, it could be quinoa, it could be potatoes, sweet potatoes,
with
squashes, bananas.
With rice, I heard something the other day that actually the difference between white rice and brown rice not a huge difference.
Yeah, so the difference is, the what I would recommend white basmati rice, the reason being,
my go-to, but
is that the husks of brown rice have a lot of toxins in them and they're quite hard to digest.
Okay.
So if you do want brown rice, you need to have organic. You don't need to have organic everything, but there's some things that contain lots of toxins. But white basmati is great, it's fine. But these are all minimally processed carbohydrates. Thinking about the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the squashes, banana is in there as well. And then the beans and pulses, and then move around to non-starchy fruits and vegetables. So we're thinking about all of your salad items, all of your green veggies, anything you could grow in the garden yourself, and all of your non-starchy fruits. The only starchy fruit is banana, really. You want 3 of those in each meal. So we got 3 fistfuls of the non-starchy fruits and vegetables, a fistful of protein and a fistful of carbs. And that's what your plate should look like for most people. So when you go around the supermarket, you can make a list. How many people you've got in your house? You've got 4. Each person needs a fistful of chicken for Monday night. It's going to work out 3 to 4 eggs for Tuesday night, and so on and so forth. And they're going to need this many portions of vegetables. We go around the supermarket, we pick up the proteins, we get enough chicken, enough mince. The best that you can afford organic, great. You can't, it's still better to have single ingredient whole food, even if it's non-organic. Don't be elitist about it.
Again, this whole thing comes again. I'm going to feed it back to what I do as a gardener. That I came clean the other week and did a piece of media about the fact I'd used a herbicide in the garden, and actually a lot of people responded really well to that. It's a nice piece of information you just dropped there. Actually, people said, actually, I'm really glad that you said that, because actually I've been beating myself up that I've got this problem I need to solve. And they feel the pressure. I've got to buy organic, I've got to buy whole, I've got to go to the farmer's market. But actually what you're saying is that a whole food, an unprocessed food, is better than just slapping an organic label on it. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, we will do what we can. When it comes to organic, I always say to people, look at your shopping list. What's the stuff that you eat every day? So therefore, over the week or the year, cumulatively, it's a lot. So for example, it might be apples, milk, bread, etc. Could you afford to make those things organic? There are things that we know to hold high amounts of pesticides, and they normally have really soft skins, like strawberries and cucumbers and spinach. So you can Google something called the Dirty Dozen.
The cucumber that you're taking away today has nothing on it.
I've got a massive cucumber in my bag. The actress said to the bishop.
From the greenhouse. Nothing on that at all.
No, exactly. So yeah, if you can afford to go organic with those things, if you can't afford to go organic with your fruit and veggies, soak it with bicarb and a little bit of apple cider vinegar
so
for
just
10-15 minutes.
A good wash.
Yeah, it'll take out probably 80%, so that's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's great. The nutrient content of organic food can differ. So with eggs, for example, if you look at a barn-raised non-organic egg compared to an organic free-range egg, the omega-3 is about triple in the organic free range.
Is it really?
So it's really interesting, and it completely makes sense, doesn't it? If a chicken is doing what it should be able to do without medication, with space, eating worms, not just being corn-fed, etc., living in the way it should be, the nutritional value of what it produces is going to be better.
Now, I would strongly suggest if nobody, I mean, I know everybody can, but has someone who has kept chickens, has chickens now, if you actually got to know a chicken, if most people actually got to know a chicken and actually went and visited one, held one and spent some time with them, they are very intelligent little creatures. They are lovely little beings.
Yeah.
I cannot think why anybody would want to lock them in a barn and never let them see the light of day and live in colonies of 1,500 birds to a barn.
Yeah.
I honestly know that was the biggest thing that we ever did, was actually get chickens and birds that live outside and actually realise these little entities are lovely little things. And
absolutely, and if you can take an interest in a few things like that and it helps you make decisions about your food, I think that's lovely.
And again, just like us, a chicken, if you give it corn, it's a little bit like, I don't know the right word to use, it's a little bit like crack.
Yeah,
I mean, they will go after corn because to them it's really tasty, it's really high nutrition, very nutritional dense, but actually you need to make the right decision for the chicken. Actually, the chicken shouldn't be eating that. Like us, they need to eat a multitude of colours and things and textures. And you end up with they say corn-fed. Well, actually, again, we're naturally led to corn-fed chicken, for instance, in the butchers. Well, again, that chicken didn't live a particularly nice life. It might have a nice proportion of fat on its body, which makes it very tasty to us. But actually, the chicken didn't have a very nice life while it was doing it. It's a funny process.
It is, definitely. So that healthy plate that I've discussed, and the going around the supermarket and working out how many people you got in the house and how much you need to get of each thing, and just trying to stay away from the aisles of brightly coloured packets that there won't be any non-UPF ingredients, will make a huge difference to your health and longevity, whether you are male, female, 5 years old, 100 years old.
And may I make the assumption that if you live somewhere with the luxury of being able to have a food delivery, that doing this at home would actually be so much easier. Online, absolutely. Away from the temptation, away from the noise.
Absolutely.
Budgetary wise, I'm assuming this makes it even easier as well.
Yeah, you can fiddle with your budget in your trolley.
Yeah, get to the end of it.
Yeah. I really, if that's accessible for you, do the online shopping. You can sit there. When I do an online shop, I still walk around the supermarket in my head. Some other little tips for online shopping that I like to give, especially around fruit and veg, is try to buy seasonal. So on most supermarket websites, they will have seasonal offers. If you go and look in the fruit and veg bit there, you don't have to be a food expert or to be educated. I know you, Ben, know what is seasonal, right?
Yeah.
But the average person possibly doesn't, or is confused and doesn't realise that the seasons shift when we have unusual weather like we have had this year.
Again, can you remember that time way back when we used to work together selling cars to the gentleman who couldn't take delivery of his car because the entire crop of broccoli had disappeared?
Oh my God, yes. There we go.
Horrible frost in Italy wiped out millions of tons of broccoli. Absolutely. There was no broccoli in the UK for 6 months.
So you can't be an expert, so just go and look at the seasonal offers. Seasonal food will be cheaper because there'll be an abundance of it, and try to look for British stuff, because you want to reduce the carbon footprint of the food that's being imported. We want to support British farmers, right, because it's important to our economy and our well-being as a whole. And also, our pesticide laws are a little bit more stringent here, so you kind of know what you're getting, and you might also find some offers on the organic stuff in there as well, because it's seasonal. Let's say strawberries have had amazing crops, you're going to be able to buy the organic strawberries cheaper at the moment. So do your online shop, take your trolley around in your head around the supermarket, get all your proteins in, go and look at the seasonal fruit and veg, see what's on there, and then have a list of favourites. So they could be UPF-free treats. Like there's a brand that I love called Crosta and Mollica.
Yeah.
So they make these wraps. They are the only
I've seen these on your page several. And there is a picture of one of your children holding one of these.
Yeah, so the kids love them, and I'm a mean mum, so I get the kids to make their own lunch. So all summer holidays, I just pack up picnic bags of stuff. These Crosta and Mollica, they're called piadinas, but they look like a wrap, and all they've got in them is flour, water, salt and olive oil.
Yeah.
And then we buy some cheeses and some fruit and some nuts and things like that. And I don't make packed lunches anymore. I just stick all this stuff in cool bags. We go to the beach. I blow up the paddleboard. I'm like, here, kids, make the lunch. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
And that's lovely. And then they learn about food. And sometimes we make some fancy things, like my son likes making his own hummus. Mm-hmm. We did a little video, which is on my social media. And he was like, video me making the hummus, mummy. I was like, yeah, why? So I just put him on the spot and said, Ted, why do you make the hummus and not buy it from the supermarket? He said, because the supermarket stuff's got yucky things in it. And I was like, yes, my son, it has. So even he knows.
I'm dying inside because there's hummus in the fridge that I'm going to give you in a minute and I know what's in it.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. We'll check it together. We'll deal with it.
Oh, no.
I promise not to throw it at these pristine walls.
Oh, I'm shrinking here.
Hilarious.
I might swap it out. There's another brand in the fridge. There's another brand in the fridge.
I'm
I might swap it out.
I'm never going to be invited here again, am I?
But no, but it's, again, for me to hear this, it's a really interesting thing that, again, you're saying about that favourites list.
Yeah.
That, again, we're all guilty of having that favourites list on our online shop and just going, yeah. Every two, but do the work and change that. Do the work and change the list up, and then become the normal, rather than just keep repeating and wondering why am I not getting any results? I seem to have changed X, Y, and Z. But actually, unless you start at the beginning of the processes, you're not going to see any change. You're going to go round and round in circles.
Absolutely. If you get rid of the ultra-processed foods, you're going to see lots of improvements. So it's not just about seeing off diseases, because those yucky ingredients, we all know, are linked to things like heart disease, diabetes, digestive conditions, etc. So we know that. It's also about, we have an obesity crisis in this country and in the Western world, and I really feel that part of that is because we're eating foods that confuse our hunger and full hormones. Yeah. They're messing up, with the signals in our brain. Our digestive health is not intact. So we're not giving ourselves the best chance, and it's not our fault. It's just what we've been told. This is okay. This is the norm to eat. So once we start getting rid of that stuff, it's going to be much easier to listen to our bodies and to work with natural hunger and need as well. And when it gets to that time in life when hormones are changing, and that could be puberty, that could be childbearing years, it could be dealing with fertility, and then it could be talking about perimenopause and menopause. We want our hormones to have the best chance of knowing what is what in our body. So if we can try and detox our lifestyles a little bit, not obsessively so, not feeling that we're not worthy because it's not all organic in our trolley, just making some key changes is really going to help us, and it's going to help us moving forward. And we're also going to make generational change so our kids aren't in the same position that we're in now, which is really important to me.
Massively. Well, it should be massively important to everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, so if we can go back to talking about food again, because I know we've talked about food a lot already. Are there some foods that we might be able to suggest to the audience that they can grow at home, that I might be able to help them grow, that you can suggest have really good impacts?
Yes, there is.
So maybe ones that you thought about maybe are great for maintaining energy levels or for maintaining hormone levels. Yeah,
so a big part of...
I'll make some notes and then I can make some
content.
Please
do. Yeah. So a big part of looking after our hormones is looking after our liver.
Yes.
So as we age, our liver function declines, especially so for perimenopausal and postmenopausal women. Yeah. Okay? Everything we eat, drink, breathe in and rub on our skin has to be detoxed through our liver. Processed through our liver. By the liver. Yeah. So how can we help our liver? So fibre is a really
important
part.
Drink lots of water.
Yeah, so drink lots of water. Ideally not British tap water.
Oh no!
It's disgusting. But anyway, we can help our liver.
Just for note, I've just given Jenny a glass of tap water.
Yeah, no, I have tap water at home, but I would like to save up for a filter.
Okay.
So, but these are we can't be perfect, can we? So eating fibre is really important, about 30 grams a day. Yeah. So we're going to get that from a variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes.
Yeah.
What can we grow at home that is really easy?
Yeah.
So And there is an additional edge to this, which I want to specifically apply to the perimenopausal and postmenopausal female, okay? And that is cruciferous vegetables. Ooh. So cruciferous vegetables have specific types of fibrin which really help detox the liver, and they specifically help us detox our hormones, because once our hormones have done their job, they've got to go out through the liver.
Okay.
Used hormones.
Again, I'm not sure everybody actually knew that.
I don't think people know that. So used estrogen, whether it be estrogen we've produced ourselves or from hormone replacement treatment, if it cannot detox through the liver, because our liver's like has an exit door, has like a fire exit, if that's backed up, it's just going to keep recirculating and it's toxic, and we can have digestive problems, weight problems, all sorts of things can come from that. So thinking about this holistic view, let's give the liver a helping hand. Including cruciferous vegetables in our diet every single day is really helpful. So the ones that most people are familiar with are things like broccoli, all types of broccoli, all types of cauliflower, broccoli sprouts, so that's the baby sprouts, and they are so expensive to buy in the supermarkets. They are,
purple, again, purple sprouting is
So if we could grow in the tiny little sprouts that look like cress of the baby broccolis, which can be, you can probably give advice on how simple
microgreens,
the little microgreens, to sprinkle those in your salad every day. And
now,
also,
see, why do I? But if they're so good for me, why every time I go to one of these pubs that's really fancy and they cover microgreens and everything, I sort of pick them off and put them to the side of my plate? I need to stop
maybe
doing
you're
that.
Suspicious of them.
I just think they're poncy and flouncy for the sake of it. So stop putting pea shoots on everything, please, for the love of God.
They do have a value, and also sprouts, ordinary sprouts.
I love me a sprout.
So obviously that's an amazing thing, and then rocket. So as a simple salad item.
I'm sorry, I can't get on board with the
arugula. I love rocket.
No, it's devil's work.
Do you know my husband says that I really like bitter foods because they suit my personality? I think that's
not
rude.
Nice, is it?
Well, I know.
Again, I remember infatuation with lemons, but again, this is wine and
bitter and sour, just like me. But rocket, really, really simple to grow, and rocket's two-pronged really. So it's in the cruciferous family, and it's also bitter. Bitter foods stimulate our digestive enzymes.
You're looking at my pad that I haven't written down.
Yes,
rocket.
I am. I'm checking your homework.
Rocket. Yeah.
So bitter foods stimulate our digestive enzymes. Many women listening may have noticed that their digestion has changed. They're having problems with bloating. They're not tolerating certain foods as they move into perimenopause. There's lots of different reasons for that. You know, we become more sensitive to irritants and our histamine goes up, but we just need to give our digestion a little bit of extra TLC. And eating bitter foods like rocket or chicory, for example, can really, really help us and get those digestive enzymes going. So there's your cruciferous family. So I think your audience would love to see if they can grow some cruciferous things. The other things I'm going to recommend are really simple, and even people who live in a flat with no balcony can grow. So, you hear about the very famous Dr. Tim Spector recommending that we have 30 plants a week. So I just want to explain why he does that and how we can all achieve it. He does it because in our gut, we've got this spectacular community of bacteria. Okay, so we were talking about these little Oompa Loompas. Imagine you've got loads of different ones in there, and they all need to live in perfect harmony, and each of them eat different foods, okay? Some of them eat really unique foods. If we don't get a spectrum of about 30 plants a week, we can't feed all of them. And then some of them die, and then some of the others take over, and then our tummy doesn't work properly, and then we get bloated, and then we can't go to the toilet. So if we
how this theory works for the entire planet.
Literally. So it's there's a microcosm in there, so we need to look after it. So the 30 plants a week, that's where that comes from. But we're not just talking about 30 different fruits and vegetables. We're also talking about any plant foods like beans, nuts, seeds, and herbs. So herbs, how easy are they? So growing some herbs on the windowsill, thinking about a broader variety than just your normal parsley, coriander, and basil will help.
Two of those are the devil's work once again.
So do you hate coriander?
I absolutely cannot abide it on anything in any way, shape, or form.
So you'll have a genetic marker, meaning you can't tolerate it. It's really, really specific with coriander.
I just thought it was a very large dislike.
No. So you'd that's a bona fide.
No, but Ben's. I'm recalling actually my legs. So I'm going to Thailand in about 6 weeks, and it will be in everything.
It will be. Or if you've got a garden, we can look at the harder herbs like rosemary, and that can also be used in teas as well. Thyme as well. Big old pots of mint, etc. So, and the herbs are the thing that make bring the flavour of your food alive. So even basic food on a limited budget can really come alive.
Yeah.
They're adding the extra plants in. So you're soon going to find, I've got 3 veggies in my dinner. I just chucked a few seeds on there. I've got 3 different herbs on the windowsill. Oh my goodness, I've actually got 7 or 8 plant varieties in my dinner tonight. Yeah. I'm absolutely going to smash my 30 plants a week target.
Yeah.
So those would be my best recommendations of things you can grow at home. If you've got a greenhouse or a little bit of space, I would urge you to grow the soft skin stuff that we spoke about would be ideal to have organic.
Yeah, that would normally absorb a lot of pesticides.
Would normally absorb a lot of pesticides. So tomatoes, cucumbers.
Check.
Yeah. So Ben's greenhouse is amazing, guys. So tomatoes, cucumbers, chilies, strawberries, raspberries, the soft stuff. Blueberries, people have, I think, mixed success with those in this country.
They're difficult to grow in this country,
Yeah, so those would be strawberries especially. I mean, my daughter would do like a kilo of strawberries in about 3 seconds.
And
if
very
I let
quickly
her.
empty your bank balance.
Yep, literally. So do this and the soft stuff. So once you put a little bit of investment into getting that infrastructure set up, you're going to have crops and crops and crops of organic stuff all summer that's going to save you lots of money. And what you can't eat, obviously, you can preserve. So make into jams, chutneys. I've heard about, do you do a special chutney recipe?
I do a red hot chili jam,
There we go. So, and do you put your tomatoes and your chilies in there?
That's the only way I can tolerate tomatoes. I have to cook them. I can't eat them.
And that's the same for
I'm
lots
sounding
of
like I'm a
people.
really fussy eater, but I'm not. But
No,
certain
not
things
at all.
certain things really, really repulse me, and the raw tomatoes just.
You're listening to your body, and that's great. So many of us complain about digestive issues when we're not listening to our body. We know that, for example, bread or raw tomatoes really give us problems. Listen, and you don't need to go to a GP or have expensive.
I mean, the sight of a cherry tomato will literally make me gip. I mean, it's just people pop. I mean, Mark loves them. He pops them in his mouth and explodes them, and I can hear this. No,
I'm a cooked tomato person as well.
Mashed again. All you've got to do is break them down so they don't actually look like their original product. And it's the seeds.
Absolutely. So if you could help your audience do those, the cruciferous family. The herbs.
See, even as a gardener, I'd never actually heard that. I mean, I've just called them brassicas.
So that's going to be a great one. And that's not just for hormone health. That's going to be for anybody who wants to look after their liver health.
Yeah.
So that could be anybody who's on a lot of medications, who is post-cancer treatment, for example, who is maybe detoxing from alcohol or substance misuse.
Yeah.
So really nourishing ourselves in situations like that and looking after our liver is going to help massively.
And again, it's a really interesting subject to touch on, because actually I don't think a lot of people realise that they wouldn't class themselves as misusing a substance when they have maybe a bottle of wine on a Friday night. But that's a lot. I think we've become very numb to that, actually, how much we should and we shouldn't drink, and confidently ticking the boxes when you go to the doctor about how many units of alcohol that you drink. Actually, let's be honest with this, 1.5 glasses of wine is a lot of wine for someone to drink.
It certainly is. Let's be honest about this. I'm not going to get on my high horse about this, because I love a margarita as much as you do.
Don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean?
But, it's made from the agave plant. It's practically one of your 5 a day. And hear me justifying it, okay? However, the official line on alcohol is, it is a class 1 carcinogen. It is the second biggest cause of cancer, including breast cancer. Okay?
I also want to make you quiet, because Mark wants us to give up alcohol. He thinks it's the root of all evil. And
however,
he makes such a good cocktail.
However, I would like to take a holistic view on this. So the official line, even though the GP says you can have 14 units a week, the official line is, no amount is safe.
No.
And cumulatively over your life, it could be creating those defective cells that we spoke about earlier. However, if we look at other countries, let's take Italy as an example, who drink regularly in a social environment, and a lot of them drink local red wine that is minimally processed.
And we're talking about alongside food which helps with the digestion.
In a relaxed environment, not as self-medication, necking alcohol to numb feelings. they have lower incidences of cancers in that country. So there's something in that. So I can't...
Again, could be also paired with their more natural gravitation towards fresh fruit and vegetables and fish.
Fresh fruit and vegetables and extra virgin olive oil, which protects the nutrients in our food when we cook and dress with it, which is interesting. So take a holistic view. This
conversation could go on for hours, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Really could.
So don't stress yourself out about it, but take a holistic view on your life. You like you were saying to me, is there a specific food we can take out and put in? No, there's not. Take that holistic view of your life. See if you can take what you're eating and your level of activity now and just take it one step up. Don't think, if I can't take it 10 steps up, there's no point, so I won't bother. That's a childish attitude.
Well,
you can make a difference.
It has got to be maintainable at the end of the day.
It's got to be maintainable.
Yeah.
You can do it, but let's just go one step. And then maybe if you get into the roller, maybe you just shave a few units of alcohol off a week.
Yeah.
You take out some of the ultra-processed foods from your diet. You get the proportion of your food right. Let's just do that for the next 6 months. Then maybe in 6 months you might go, I'm going to really understand what it would be better for me to have organic, non-organic. And then maybe 6 months after that you'll think, right, okay, I'm really going to look at my exercise protocols and work out how I can increase my muscle mass.
Yeah.
Do what's doable for you. But don't do nothing because you think it's all too much.
Yeah, but because we're all put off by making a start, isn't it? And it's sort of breaking it down into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
So just going back to premenopause and menopause and supporting people that are entering into that stage.
Yeah.
What suggestions would you make for the male audience that may have got this far? I'm not sure many of them would, but let's face it. What kind of help and assistance can we be offering people that we may suspect or have been open enough to tell us that this is happening?
Yeah, to start with, education for all is really important. So lots of men who in their workplace get the opportunity to go to a menopause awareness session end up going home and saying to their partner, you said you were struggling with this and this.
I didn't know it was that.
I'm not an expert, but I was thinking you could go and have a chat with your GP, or you could download some information from this Hormones on the Blink website.
Yeah.
And that might help. And in the meantime, I am here to support you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to talk about these changes that are happening. Don't try to diagnose your partner. Don't try to send them off to the doctors as punishment. Because we all know that can be scary.
It's not the 1950s, yeah.
It's not the 1950s. But say you were there, say that you've maybe had some education, say that there's this helpful website where there's some free resources, things like how to get the most out of your GP appointment, lists of common signs and symptoms. The signs and symptoms are huge. The only one that people seem to talk about is hot flushes, and it's not even the most common. The psychological changes, the forgetfulness, the anxiety, misplacing common words. So, funny little story. I was sat on the beach with my kids.
People will call this in just after childbirth. They call it baby brain.
Yeah.
It's
hormonal changes.
The body is overwhelmed with different balances.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, forgetting words all the time. I literally, things are coming into my brain and they are disappearing, and I can't, not for £1 million can I remember them. Sat on the beach the other day with the kids, and I hear a noise on the sea, and I look and I point and I go, look, and the kids are looking at me like, what? And I was like, look, it's a motorbike of the sea. And they were like, that's a jet ski, Mum. What the hell are you talking about?
But it completely disappeared.
Happens all the day. I've started leaving all the cupboard doors in the kitchen open. All of them. At the same time. But if you told me to walk back in there, I'd look at them and I'd go, who the
hell has been in my kitchen?
Yeah. It's like my brain sometimes is not my own. I'm feeling more myself and better since I have started my HRT journey, which is great.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I'm able to do that. I'm grateful that my GP listened to me. I'm grateful that my health means I can have HRT, because not everybody can, especially those who've been through a breast cancer journey, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful I live in a country where I just have to pay a small prescription fee to get that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to pay privately to get that.
Yeah.
It's not accessible for everybody.
No.
So, it's quite a big deal. And I just want to encourage any male to put this on their radar, not to become an expert, but just to know and to just look around them at the people that they are married to, engaged to, live with, female siblings.
In a family with,
mums, in a family with, and particularly their colleagues. So, 50% of the workplace is female.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen when these really experienced women in their field, in the workplace, start struggling with health symptoms and they're unsupported in the workplace?
And what other symptoms are common to be experienced?
Yeah, so
because you've mentioned obviously forgetfulness and the loss of words and hot flushes, which everybody seems to be fixated by. But what else can
changing mental health? So lack of confidence, anxiety, depressive symptoms, and it's really important to point out that when those are hormone related, there's no evidence to suggest that traditional antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication help them.
No,
it's actually addressing the hormone balance.
I was going to say, because that's going to be I'm not going to again tar the GP population with saying, but again it's going to be if you don't get the most out of that GP appointment, it is going to be that. Here we go, here's some amitriptyline, and because it's cheap and cheerful, and go and try that for 8 weeks.
So interrupted sleep is a massive one, and we all know that affects how we operate in the day.
Yeah.
It affects our blood sugar levels, so it affects our hunger, then it could affect our weight and our muscle mass, and our insulin sensitivity is declining anyway, so that's not going to help with our sense of self-worth.
I'm going to I don't want to, sorry to interrupt you again, but while we talk about sleep, have you got an impression of sleep? Because there is this overwhelming pressure that every human being should be getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a day, and let's face it, that's not achievable for most people.
It's not achievable for a lot of people. Ideally, actually, women going through perimenopause do need more sleep because the brain needs and the body needs more rest.
But is it okay to have that? Is that okay if that's broken and have maybe 3 hours and 4 hours, or 3 hours and...
You get the best that you can get, but the reality is, if your sleep is very broken a number of times, your expectations of what you can achieve in the day need to be reduced, or you are going to find yourself potentially in burnout, and that's hard. You see you putting your hand up.
Yeah.
So, we can't reduce the rest and the food and the support that we put in and still expect the same output. That's not reasonable, is it?
No.
So, for example, in a work environment, let's say your sleep is broken, you're anxiety ridden, you're forgetting words, you're having hot flushes in meetings. There's other random symptoms like tinnitus, skin changes and itching, all sorts of things. Getting injuries more frequently as our soft tissue changes. Mm-hmm. So imagine trying to operate in a high pressure job that you've got 20 years of experience to be in that job, and your company needs you, but you're not getting sleep, you're feeling anxious, you're forgetting things in meetings, you're potentially having irregular periods, you're bleeding unexpectedly at work, but again, the toilets are terrible.
This is also goes to say, not just with a high pressure job, but anywhere you feel like you're juggling multiple balls. This could be we've got friends with 4 children. I've got 4 children. One needs to be here, one needs to be there. I need to get home for this delivery, and it is literally, the modern world moves at such a vast rate. And I'm not saying it was any easier, because obviously there's a lot more understanding, but 30 years ago, let's face it, the world did not move at this pace that we're expected to keep up with now, and I've got to the point where I've had to acknowledge the fact that I can't keep up with it, and gone, no, I'm overloaded, I need to walk away from this. So again, even if it's just, I'm not saying that sounds like a belittling statement, but we're talking about anybody that's got multiple balls in the air and actually is struggling to cope with keeping them afloat.
Absolutely. And we feel, I think I can speak for women as a whole on this, whatever situation we're in. I have a small business and I try to adjust my hours around the kids, but sometimes I feel I'm underachieving there because the kids aren't getting enough in the summer holidays, and I'm not working enough hours. Or whether you're in a traditional workplace environment and you don't have the same output, we feel like we're failing, and that's rubbish when we're putting everything in, and potentially you've had children and you've made huge sacrifices there. So that's really difficult, and I just want to have a part in helping women advocate for themselves, educating, signposting, facilitating with helpful information to make that experience of this change through midlife a little bit easier.
Because we were talking earlier when we were walking around the garden when you first arrived, and you were talking about being your authentic self online, and this pressure between different and multiple platforms, and I said I'd experienced the same, and I found the best thing for me is actually to dispense the information in the way that obviously the conversation today is vastly different than it would normally be, but to dispense the information in a way that's authentic to me and comes across naturally to me and not change what I do.
Yeah.
And I think you've just sort of knocked your own question on the head then. It's the kind of information you're giving is, I'm not saying it's straight to the point, but I'm fussy, but let's cut away the barrier, let's cut away the fluff and the noise, and let's just get straight to the yes.
Totally. I'm a real person who gets their hands dirty, who understands people from different walks of life and different lifestyles, been in some very real situations.
This last and final part of the conversation I had with Jenny, which was recorded at North Lodge some weeks ago, was not only incredibly challenging to have in person, but is more challenging to listen back to. And in fact, this little soundbite that I've added in between the chunks of conversation has taken me almost a dozen times to get right. And on this particular take, I've promised myself to be as open and honest as possible and to allow myself to feel the way that I feel about the conversation that you're about to hear. There is a large and very detailed backstory about how I met Jenny and how we ended up working together all those years ago, and more importantly, what bonded us together. Now, many of you that follow along on social media will know that I've been on quite the journey over the last 12 to 15 months, undertaking a large amount of personal talking therapy, which lasted for weeks and weeks on end. For those of you that have embarked on that particular journey, you know that this involves very willingly you taking your life apart stage by stage, laying all of the things out in front of you that you didn't want to look at and picking through the little bits of your life. This has then spurred me on to lose around 100 pounds in weight, using not only a complete shakedown of my life, therapy, exercise, lifestyle and diet, but also Monjaro as a weight loss drug. I've done the therapy and the work behind finding out why it is that I eat, why I eat, and have had the relationship with food that I've had over the last 40 years. But this last particular part of this episode is very difficult for me to talk about. So I'm going to let Jen do the talking from now on. And I need to express my heartfelt thanks for the help and support Jenny gave me in this very difficult and very challenging part of my life that she came to my aid in all of those years ago. We're going to talk about this, aren't we?
We're going to talk about this. So I want to tell the audience how we met. So Ben and I trauma bonded, right? 20 years ago when we worked in the motor trade together. We worked...
Well, you hired me.
Yeah. So I
tell people you poached me.
I did. Yeah. So I wanted to, from when I was very young, I wanted to work in the motor trade because my brother and my dad were into cars and I wanted to sell cars. So I got a job as a trainee at this dealership and I was kind of sniffed at because I was a female, but this big brand had a process where you were assessed and if you passed the assessment, you got the job. So yeah. I got it fair and square. And over a period of a couple of years, I ended up managing that department, being the sales manager of that department. I was really young, I was really female. And
really female?
Really female, yeah. Really young and female. And I worked hard, did my best in what I can now wholeheartedly say was a pretty toxic environment. It was sexist, it was ageist, it was everything, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But
this wasn't even at this. We're talking about in the mid 2000s here. We're not even talking about
2001, like 2002.
I think I joined you about 2003 to 2005.
Yeah. So over 20 years ago. Yeah. So you know things were a bit backward there. I was sexually...
Imagine what that would have been in the 90s.
Yeah, absolutely. Ooh. I was sexually harassed openly.
All day, every day.
All day, every day. Yeah. And
objectified.
Objectified. And I am a fairly straight-talking person and I dealt with it by just telling people
then we can't use a particular word here today because that is a step too far. But you did normalise the use of a particular word for me, which I still use an awful lot today in my normal culture.
Yes, absolutely. And I absolutely a terribly rude naming word.
But again, it's a very descriptive word. When you run out of other options, then actually that's the word.
This person is a this.
Yeah.
I've told these people time and time again to something off and to leave me alone, and that was it. I dealt with it, but the reality is I should have taken them to task. Mm-hmm. I ended up being, enjoying my time, being successful, but at what cost? Because it really wore me down. I poached Ben to be a salesperson for me.
I should interject that I didn't want to work in the car sales industry because for any other reason, but I'd had a horticultural career and realised I was doing something that I loved, but actually I couldn't live. No. I couldn't buy a house. I couldn't rent a house that I wanted. I couldn't have the lifestyle I wanted. And this seemed a really easy avenue in without... Realistically,
you could earn a lot of money.
Yeah, I could earn a lot of money without actually having any qualifications apart from being approachable and nice and having the tenacity to do it, which is how I ended up with a budget brand and then was very successful at a budget brand. And then one of my colleagues, I'm not going to name the colleague because it would be quite nasty, but she had an interest in going somewhere further and I actually cuckooed her out of the brand I was in because I wanted her desk. Anyway, I knocked her out of the nest. She went to work for the brand that you were also associated with.
Yeah.
And I took her desk and then you came and poached me anyway. And I ended up working with her anyway.
Exactly that. So we had...
And she was another woman who was very, very good at what she did in her own way.
Absolutely.
I wonder where she is now.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah.
And Ben and I had a few good years together, tearing it up in car sales. We also had a great social life, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it was really good fun. And we stuck together. And Ben was 100% loyal, professional, extremely good at what he did. And I always told everybody then and now, was my best salesman and was my ride or die in that dealership. But I got to a point where the sexual harassment and discovering that I was not paid the same as my equal male counterparts peed me off so much. I thought, I just don't want to do it anymore.
And let's face it, this is still happening.
It's still happening.
This pay gap is still massive.
Yeah, the law that's supposed to have quashed that is still very recent, but it's still happening. Unless people speak out about it, nothing's going to happen.
No, quite.
So I decided to leave this company. I should have taken them to tribunal, especially because of the sexual harassment from my direct manager. But I, kind of spoke to HR and this and that and whatever, and they let me have an extended...
Well, she was always frightfully nice. But
frightfully
wet.
Nice. But really, do you know what scared me from taking them to tribunal is, as a manager, I was sent on a training course with their lawyers, big shiny law firm, where over 2 days we were told how that law firm would help us quash any employees who brought concerns forward. Yeah. They didn't teach me as a manager how...
To protect the company asset.
To protect the company asset. They didn't teach me as a manager how actually we should create an inclusive environment, a supportive environment, work with the employees to stop these situations happening in the first place. And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do now in terms of being a menopause trainer for Hormones on the Blink, is going into workplaces and helping managers who just don't know any better, just facilitating them with some information and teaching them how to empathise and to deal with things so that things don't get nasty like that, because no one wants that. But this company I worked with, Ben, I left and I just kind of slipped out and, they...
Well, I then went next door.
Yeah, and then Ben went and worked for the dealership that were linked to the brand that was linked next door. And
then it got really bad for me.
And then they treated you really badly, didn't they?
They didn't know what to do with me.
No.
And again, I've said this time and time again to people that I was very good at what I did. I did what I did in my own way and in my own style. They didn't like what I wore. They didn't like the beard. They didn't like my hair. They didn't like the fact I wouldn't wear a company coat, although there was no procedures or anything written around these things. And I just remember saying to my sales manager, he goes, would you want to be known as the guy with the pink tie? And I used to say to him, if the customer can't remember my name and they walk into the sales department and ask reception, I want to see the guy with the grey cashmere coat and the pink tie, I'll be the guy with the pink tie and the grey coat. I don't care. I'm here to sell units.
I just want to point out, Ben always looked exceptionally smart, very ironed. This wasn't some crazy rubbish pink tie. It was a beautiful silk pink tie tied with a Windsor knot.
I'd also like to interject that it was the mid-2000s, so there was a certain style. Yeah. It was very sort of pointy shoes and tight trousers, but there was a particularly brown suit. Oh my God, that makes me cringe to this day. I remember buying that. Anyway, but yeah, that ended quite over. And then when that got to the point where I couldn't take anymore, and I one day stood up and pushed my chair back and walked out of that showroom and said, I cannot put up with this anymore, you were the only person that came to my defence. I called you and you were the only person that came.
Well, Ben phoned me and said that basically Ben had been told me he'd been bullied. I don't think he used that word, but said what had been happening.
I don't think I had the vocabulary for that word.
I don't think he had the vocabulary of that, because I think they'd made you believe that...
I'm using the speech bubbles again. I hate them, but it's this whole banter word which I wish we could eradicate from society, because it's this umbrella which most people seem to get away with saying things that they really shouldn't be saying, and it's actually it's not right.
Definitely.
Just workplace banter. It's
definitely
like, no, it's not. You're being horrible.
And Ben said what had happened, and that he'd got some advice, and that it basically resulted in a tribunal, and would I stand and be a witness for him, having directly managed him myself. So I did that, and it was quite scary, because I went into this big courtroom situation and faced all the people that I'd worked with for years. I faced those male managers, who some of which had sexually harassed me, and I was basically testifying against them, I suppose, and giving Ben a character reference and saying how he had been as an employee under my management, and only saying good things about him, and it was the right thing to do. But what I realised through that process is that for Ben it was really difficult. We have this view that if a person takes a company to tribunal, it's like a bit of a gamble for them. Oh, they could get loads of money out of it, great. But what if they don't?
Well,
okay,
they did offer to settle on the day at court, and I turned it down.
Yeah, and because you wanted to pursue.
I did. I wanted my whether that people say that's egotistical or egocentrical. This story needed to be out, and the only thing I'm very proud of with that particular instance. One, I'm incredibly thankful for you for answering the call, because until about a year ago, I hadn't realised, and I had a bit of an aha moment, and I remember messaging you from a place in Mexico last year and saying, I don't think I ever really thanked you for what you did, and acknowledge how difficult that would have been. But I just wanted the story to be out there, and if nothing else happened, actually the story out there, and it still lives now. I'm not going to Google it, but if you Google it, it's there for the world to read, and it's actually, it might have cost me absolutely everything I ever owned, because it did cost me absolutely everything, but the story was told, and hopefully that business learnt a bloody hard lesson.
And all power to you for sticking by your guns and being authentic and getting that story out there. And I remember you saying to me, because you had watched this sexual harassment of not just me but other females in the business happening.
Almost half a dozen of you.
Yeah, and I remember being a female manager and dealing with it in my own way. It should never have happened to me, but telling particular males where to go. But I felt really guilty that I didn't do something more about it at the time, when a much younger female staff member came to me and said, I don't know what to do, this person is harassing me. And I sent them to HR, but really HR probably weren't very capable or ethical.
Very much in the pocket of the dealer principal, not
for
a particularly standalone department.
Yeah.
I don't think HR should be a PA and an HR at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And I really draw on this experience, understanding how difficult it was for Ben to come forward like that, and the fact that clearly Ben was not doing it for the money, because he turned down money to bring what had happened to to light. And I realised, when I support businesses now and try to stop these things happening, because women don't want to end up in tribunal saying that terrible things have happened to them, a business has treated them unfairly when they were suffering with menopausal symptoms.
No.
They do not want to end up in that situation. And even if they were to win a sum of money, they're then left in a position where they're worried the next company that employs them might think certain things of them. They're traumatized, their confidence is at the all-time low. And I really think if I can just help workplaces build this more inclusive and knowledgeable environment and supportive environment, we can just stop this happening. And there'll be less incidences of people having to take companies to tribunal, which is very, very scary for both sides and not good for anyone at all.
No, quite. And for me, all that did is made me say that I would never be employed by anybody ever again. And that's exactly what's happened. I've been self-generating and self-sufficient ever since, because I just haven't been able to put myself back into that position. And I've realised that, again, we'll wrap the conversation up, but I ended up being an island, being on my own for an awfully long time, and not realising that I hadn't processed an awful lot of stuff until say about a year ago, when I started the journey that I'm on now, and actually realising that actually I need to start unpackaging some of this stuff and laying it out and picking my way through it and putting it back in the boxes. You never lose some things. You just learn to carry them in a different way. And we obviously talked about the symptoms of menopause and nutrition today in a broad and open factor, but I realised that I was carrying certain parts of trauma which had shaped my life, and I was experiencing physical symptoms of that, which I was going back to and forwards to the doctors to deal with, taking, as we discussed about earlier, a pill for that. And then there was another pill for something else. For instance, I was suffering with a lot of gastric problems and disturbed sleep and weight gain that nobody could really sort of account. The diet was right, the activity levels was right. And it was realistically my body screaming at me to stop. But I had masked that for decades, and I suppose my worth had been assigned to my output, which in sales is great because you normally get a huge amount back for your output. But then doing a physical move, moving back to a physical job, and actually being a gardener again and going back to that trade, you realise that actually I was ignoring all the symptoms of burnout, and I'd done that for a long time and often been celebrated by the people around me. I'm not associating blame with anybody this, but Ben is always so steadfast. Ben will always turn up no matter what the weather does, no matter how tired or what the situation is, he turns up and does. Well, actually all that was behind the scenes was someone who was screaming. And I spoke to, I spoke to my therapist about this this last week, that I never had intrusive thoughts to the point where I would hurt myself. But I can remember saying to Mark dozens of times, if I fell off the back of the wagon and broke my leg, I could stop. And my therapist said to me, she said, realise that the words that are coming out of your mouth, how often did that happen? I said, well, that was happening for 15 years. And the stop has been the hardest thing that I have ever in my entire life. And you said all about why we were going to move from here. Well, actually, the house that we're pointing out that we were going to move from, Mark and I almost thought it was so much easier to sell the house we'd completed than actually stay in it and enjoy it. And that I don't know if you've ever watched. There's a song that says, taking steps is easy, but standing still is hard, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done is standing still. And I quite often say I feel like the world is burning around me and I'm actually doing work on myself, but realise that I can't do any more until the work is done and I can move forward. I'd clipped my wings, I'd got as big as I could possibly get to, and it wasn't enough.
We've all got to invest in ourselves. We've got to take those signs and symptoms from our body and slow down and see what is happening and nourish ourselves and get support as well.
We've digressed and we've gone off on another tangent, but
we do it all the time.
Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today. Thank you so much for your time. Remind everybody where they can find you and what it is you do.
So you can find me on Instagram, Jen_Flourish Nutrition. You can check out my website, which is flourishnutrition.co.uk. You can also find me as a hormone health and menopause trainer on hormonesontheblink.com website. I help women with their wellness, whether that be through nutrition, one-to-one, nutrition in workplaces, or hormone health and menopause training in workplaces.
Amazing. Jane, thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you for being so generous with your time as well.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you soon. Take care. I hope that you've enjoyed this particular episode of the Gardener Ben podcast, and indeed my very challenging conversation with Jenny. And that if you or anybody around you is suffering with symptoms of peri or menopause, or you want to know more about the subject, you head over to her Instagram channel where you'll find her offering loads of information on the subject. You'll find her using the handle on Instagram, Jen_Flourish Nutrition. And if you need to reach out to her, please do. That last section of the conversation I had with Jenny was incredibly difficult to listen to and, of course, to edit, but symbolises a real large turning point in my life. Indeed, when Mark and I headed across to Mexico around 15 months ago to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary, it was only then that I could realise just how depressed I'd been for such a long period of my life and how much grief, pain and sorrow that I carried with me every single day. I chose to leave some of those items in the sea assigned to rocks in Mexico, but when I got home, vowed to make things a little bit different. When I embarked on my own personal journey and entered into talking therapy. It's been the most difficult thing that I've ever done in my life. And once I've started taking my life apart, there's been dozens of times in that process where I've wanted to put everything back in a box and run away with it, pretending I'd never seen it and pretending I'd never started the process. However, once you start, there is no going back. You need to take things at your own time and at your own pace. And as I mentioned in the little snippet there, I've embarked on my own journey of over 30 hours of personal talking therapy. Looking at the way and the relationship I have with food has been a really, really interesting part of that journey, and has been one of the largest catalysts of me losing quite so much weight. I no longer feel that food rules my life. I'm not ruled by sugar cravings and the want to eat my feelings every 5 minutes, although this particular section once again hasn't been particularly easy to record. In the next couple of weeks, I'm also going to be bringing you a really interesting conversation with my Reiki practitioner. Nicola lives really close to us here in Fordingbridge, and I went to see her for the first time at Christmas. She described me as a person who was carrying an immense amount of weight, pain, suffering and agony, specifically in my shoulders, that weight bearing down on my hips, into my knees and into my ankles. The experience I had with Nicola during my first Reiki session was utterly overwhelming. In fact, I cried like a baby laying there on her couch, as she gave me the permission to let go of an awful lot of pain, suffering and sorrow, which I'd been carrying with me as a burden for many, many years. So do look out for that particular episode, which will be coming in a few weeks' time. The Gardener Ben podcast has been proudly brought to you in association with Peterbilt's Roses, winner of 30 Chelsea Gold medals and crafting timeless roses since 1968. Shop online at www.peterbilsroses.com and make sure that you're following along on Instagram and TikTok. I'll see you all again very soon. Take good care now. Bye-bye.